Hello, everyone. I hope, to those of you who are listening, that you've had a nice weekend. It's Monday, like the 19th of May. Um, but you could be listening years from now. So a nice weekend whenever that is. Um, anyway, I'd like to talk about today, Major Anderson. Now, so you may say there are many major Andersons, but really, I mean, I'm looking at the Civil War, and Major Anderson, I believe, was a hero, and I will explain why, despite the fact that for any of you who are Civil War buffs or history buffs, you may know that Major Anderson was commander of Fort Sumter, at the beginning of the Civil War. When it came under attack by the uh Confederacy, or yeah. But why is he a hero? I mean, for some, I mean, he's a slave owner, um, and that automatically means that he's like a terrible person. Um, and yes, well, I do think that uh, owning slaves, and the fact that he once so Anderson had a wife and they got married. She was from Georgia, and then they sold most of their slaves. They didn't free them, like, which would have been, okay, they sold them to other plantation owners. Uh, which is even worse because that basically means that, you're dividing families and sending people away. I mean, so yeah. Um, well, I mean, I don't think it's hero because he's a slave owner or because he sold his slaves. I think there are parts of him that are bad. And him being a slave owner is bad. But I mean, not just bad. I mean, like, uh, people are raised in Southern society in the antebellum South. Um, the expectation, the desire of most Southerners was to basically one day own your own plantation and have it be farmed by slaves, and then to make money selling cotton or tobacco or indigo or whatever. I mean, that was just the expectation. And while I wouldn't say there were good slave owners, there were some slave owners who were, let's say, more benevolent than others. I mean, Thomas Jefferson, at least according to most of the histories I've read, never sold any of the slaves. Um, although he did sell the ones who went away. But the vast majority, no. Just Washington, additionally, did not. I mean, Andrew Jackson seems to have been a fair but relatively benevolent slave. That doesn't mean they're good. I mean, but because I think holding that is to understand that there's like a spectrum here. Well, on one side you have, say, more benevolent slave owners, and then on the other side, you have slave owners who uh think nothing about whipping their slaves, working many of them to death. Um, and then you've got in between, which is where the vast majority of people will lie, where, you know, they uh benefit from slavery, but they sometimes treat themselves terribly, but on the whole. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm not saying he's hero for being a slave owner and whatever. No, but I think makes him a hero is his commitment from a purely military standpoint, because he was in the military, fought in the Mexican War, of doing his duty, you know. And we can recognize that in one instance, right, when the moment came to uphold his military oath to the United States, he was from a border state. His wife was from a Georgian family, very much pro-Confederate. But Major Anderson upheld his oath, right, to serve the United States. And during a moment of crisis, he acted, um, and I'm just going to share, because I'm just going to, uh, you this is going to be from Wikipedia, so, for those of you looking for in-depth research, this is not the channel, but there are a number of Civil War channels that are worth checking out, and I may put, I can't link them because you have to go through this thing for the links, but I will put, addresses to them down in the comments. So hopefully you go to those if you want in-depth, research, if I can find any. I may not. So this is not going to be in-depth research. I'm just going to go by Wikipedia, you know. Um, so yes. So yes, this is Wikipedia and Union officer. Here we have a picture of Anderson. I think he looks rather handsome from like 19th century sort of I mean, I'm not, but anyway, so yeah, we have his early career, and he was born in 1805 in Louisville, Kentucky. Um, he died 1871 in Nice, France. Did not know. Maybe he moved to France. Who knows? After Fort Sumter. Um, maybe he was torn in the regions, but he fought in the Seminole Wars in the 1830s. Brutal wars, by the way. The Seminole Wars. Maybe I'll cover them at some point. They are an under represented period in history. Then he participated in the Mexican-American War, the Battle of Caragode, the skirmish of Amazon, and the Battle of Molino del Rey. Wounded a moment also received a brevet and a promotion to major. Um, and you may be wondering, why is he still like a major when Civil War breaks out if he got the promotion in 1847? So from what I understand, Major Anderson was not the easiest person to get along with. I mean, he was respected by most of the men under him, but in terms of his superiors, he was a very duty-bound by the book kind of officer. Um, Not particularly ambitious, but like somebody who was like, it's gotta be by the military rules. And sort of inflexible in that line of thinking. Um, and what that means is that he just tended to rub other people the wrong way. And the pre-Civil War, indeed, the post-Civil War U.S. Army up until, say, I don't know, I think World War One, was a very kind of chummy place, right? In which if you made friends, you could rise quickly. Um, in which these cultivations of friendships were key to getting promotions. Obviously, you didn't need to have experience, but you know, um, and so this is why, for example, Sherman, one of my favorite Civil War generals. This is why Sherman rose high, both before, during, and after the Civil War. And Sherman was very good at making friends, and making friends, you can make alliances. You can get promotions easier. If you're somebody like Major Anderson who rubs people the wrong way, and it's about it is about uninspiring figure, then your promotions can be very slow. And so that's why, despite being the rank of Major in 247, he is still more or less the rank of Major in 1860, I believe. But again, maybe he got like a few promotions in the end. Those of you who are very knowledgeable of the Civil War, make it correct. So in November 1860, he was assigned to U.S. forces in Mount Charleston, South Carolina. So yeah, and I'm taking one of the sources that are not in Wikipedia here from the book 1861 um by what is it? Robert 1861 Civil War Awakening by Adam Goodheart. Which is I mean I'm reading through it. I mean you know I'm interested in Civil War. So and it's by let's see. Oh, Gary Gallagher. And in his book, in his first chapter, um, let's put this. Lot of Civil War books. But I'm looking for Confederates, Antietam campaign. All right. Um, just a moment. Well, yeah, it's called The Emerging Civil War. No, that's wrong. Just a moment. Look on my Kindle. Mhm. The Coming Theory. And it's by yeah. No, it's not by Gallagher. Sorry, it's by Bruce Catton. And he's an older Civil War historian. I think famous for his yeah, by Bruce Catton. And its first chapters deal with major ended. Well, I think it's his third chapter. But anyway, those are the two sources besides Wikipedia. And put like to them in the description. So if you want to learn more, I mean, I'm sure there's a biography on Major Anderson somewhere, but um, So he was, Major Anderson was posted to, not initially Sumter, but Fort Moultrie, um, at least according to the 1861 book. At least according to Goodheart, had been a, uh, famous, uh, it had been a famous, it had been a fort during the American Revolution, um, and, had been made out of palm wood, palmetto wood, and it absorbed, during, one battle, which actually Major Anderson's father had fought for. Yeah, maybe this is, I think his grandfather. His grandfather. But yeah, I mean, interesting is, they both were stationed at Fort Moultrie. Yeah, I mean, so it absorbed the shots from the British who attacked Charleston, and this was, and they fired back and, destroyed the British, beat the British, became famous. Uh, South Carolina adopted the palmetto, on its flag and became the Palmetto State. Um, so yeah, but that had been like, 70 years ago. So in the intervening years, the fort had not really been upgraded much and had fallen into kind of a state of disrepair. I mean, and so it was really, not there to like fight a battle, but they were stationed there just for, you know, symbolic reasons. And then you had Fort Sumter, which was out in the middle of Charleston Harbor, and it had been built in an artificial island, that had been made of New England granite, at least according to Goodhart. And, according to, Bruce Catton, it was like a, still under construction, but like a 80% complete, and it was like a modern, at least at the time, modern fortress. Um, and with guns and whatever. So, Anderson gets stationed there, and it's like 1860, and, um, after the election, um, it gets, when he's in, after the election of Abraham Lincoln, um, you have to remember that, back then, you elect in November, but the president didn't take, uh, power until I think March, something like that, which is January now. Um, and so he's put in charge there, by the Secretary of War, who at the time was a Southerner. Um, and there's some thinking that, he hoped that, Major Anderson would be sympathetic to the South, and by putting him there, and Major Anderson arrived there and just cemented the fort. Well, Major Anderson didn't. I mean, just do that. I mean, he was actually sent a message by the Secretary of War. Um, let me, Buchanan. Um, James B. Floyd. Who, was Secretary of War. He's like known to be incompetent and poor Southern. Anyway, he sent Major Anderson a letter after like South Carolina seceded, and he was basically like, well, you surrender the fort if attacked. Like whatever. We don't want to. The issue of that is that Anderson took one look at the veterans like I'm not gonna like surrender the fort, without a fight. So, and he kept sending reports to Washington about the situation, which got from bad to worse. South Carolina seceded. Then they seized arsenals in the state. Um, and he had to. There were civilians on the island working on Fort Sumter and other forts. They were sent home. He had to garrison. I think it's three forts: Fort Moultrie, Fort Sumter, another one that I forgot. Um, and he had only enough men. We really didn't have enough men to do it. Um, and his men under him were getting frustrated, because he seemed to just be doing nothing while the situation was going out of control. I mean, they were South Carolina militiamen were practice firing, and the people of South Carolina were sort of under the illusion that the fort was going to bombard the city. Um, um, Even though that was just not going to happen. Um, so the reality of the situation is that he was facing a pretty dire situation. And as 1860 wore on, it became more dire. And so he eventually received a letter from Floyd, I believe, which basically said, well, him and hard, but if equitable, if you think you're going to be attacked, you can take um measures you deem necessary short of fire. Right? I mean, that is to say you can. And so Anderson took that letter and he was like, actually, he through some gymnastics, mental gymnastics, said that he could abandon Fort Moultrie and get to Fort Sumter. Most of his men were on Fort Moultrie, but he did have a garrison on Fort Sumter. Few men. And so he gathered up the men, and under the cover of night, um, he moved his small garrison from Fort Moultrie, which was indefensible, for in the middle of Charleston Harbor. So, this had outraged the people of South Carolina. I mean, because they had what they thought been promised by President Buchanan that they would he would just stay there where he was no threat to the city of South Carolina. And he was in an indefensible position, and they could threaten him until everything could be sorted out and they could negotiate with the United States. Um, Now he had moved his men to Fort Sumter, um, under the cover of night. Um, and then they did have a ship patrolling, a steamship patrolling between Sumter and Moultrie, but they had thought that it was some workmen, because it'd been early in the morning. So yeah, I mean it's position. He then went to Fort Sumter, with his garrison, manned it. Um, and um, at the same time, so there was consternation in South Carolina. Um, the Lincoln administration, um, which gained in January, no, March 1861. They they made the decision to supply Fort Sumter. There had been debate in the Buchanan cabinet about what they should do, and what like they'd been divided between Southerners and Unionists, and because some of Buchanan's cabinet were Southerners and more sympathetic to the Confederacy in South Carolina, some were Northerners and pro-Union. So they'd really been unable to make a game plan. Meanwhile, Anderson's just sitting there in the harbor, right, sending desperate messages to Washington about supply. So the Lincoln administration comes in, and they have this crisis of what to do about something. Lincoln summons his cabinet. This is in the first meeting. I believe this is sometime in February, but and he gives, the opinion, right? What should we do? Should we abandon Fort Sumter? Should we supply it? Right? In each and every one of them, they give the opinion that it can't really be supplied. That they should be abandoned it, somehow for it. And Lincoln hears about the cabinet. And then he gives his own opinion, which is to say he's determined to hold Fort Sumter. He sends a supply ship. I believe by this time the Confederacy is formed, and spies report to Jefferson Davis. Of course, there were spies in both capitals. And Civil War, there was no such thing as a secret plan. So they get word of the Confederate Intelligence Service, gets word of the supply ships, and they fire on it, drive it away. And so Anderson informs Beauregard that he's gonna have to surrender in like a week. Just run out of supplies. But Jefferson Davis sort of is in I believe it's not Richmond. He's thinking on this. No, it's not Richmond. It's still Montgomery because Virginia's in the city. He's still thinking about this. And Beauregard reports to him, and he says, well, we should start the war anyway, because, Union should have abandoned it, right? We're not gonna wait for them to surrender. I think it was a stupid move on Jefferson Davis's part. So they do fire on Fort Sumter, and no men are killed. They hold out for, I believe, a day, and then that's it. So Anderson is captured by the Confederates. He eventually gets given back, and is a hero in the North. And the question is, why is he here, right? He's a hero because he did his duty, right? Against even, as I say, the wishes of John Floyd, who just wanted to surrender the fort, without a fight. In the face of an administration of Buchanan who really did not know what to do about Fort Sumter and were hopelessly divided, he did his duty as he saw it. Even though his wife was sympathetic to the Confederacy, even though he came from a southern state with a lot of Confederate support, he did his duty. When many officers, right, decided, were joining the Confederacy. And some of them had maybe valid reasons, but in the end of the day, you're still breaking oath. You swore an oath to the United States, and now you're going back on it. Because your state happened to secede, or you have property, or simply believe the Confederacy is the side you want to win. But Anderson did his duty. And I mean, I think that it's important to remember this. I mean, um, and I think that's what makes him a hero. Um, and maybe you disagree with me, but I think Major Anderson's a hero. So, and that is why. Um, yeah. So I hope those of you who are Civil War fans found this informative, despite my umming and yes. Uh, and yeah, I mean, just if anybody ever listens to this, tell me in the comments if you agree or disagree. Is Major Anderson a hero? Um, or does the fact that he owned slaves mean that he's an irreparable villain? Or should we see him as just a soldier who did his duty? Right. Um, three options. You know, tell me in the comments what you think. Um, have a nice day, everyone. Probably have a video some other time this week, maybe tomorrow. Uh, yeah. Um, I'm thinking about doing it on the Doors of Paradise, um, which is the doors to the Fontine Baptist, which I think are one of the most beautiful, uh, pieces of art in the world, in my humble opinion. So, that being said, um, see you all later, and have a nice day.